Good evening. The elders have asked me to make an announcement to all the groups that we will be videoing today for Bible classes. That is the teen group, the younger age group, and for the adult group, so that we can communicate as much as possible to the congregation as a whole. So we understand there may be some adults that will be listening to the kids' lessons with them. So we want to make sure that every adult and parent hears this note from the eldership. So if you would just bear with me as I read this, because I want to make sure that I get all of the points that the eldership wanted us to have. After much discussion and many prayers, your shepherds have come to the decision to require masks in public places as described below for everyone, except for those 4 years and old and under at all assemblies of the Lord's Church here at Silo Road. Masks should be worn when entering and exiting the building, when in public places such as the foyer, hallways, and bathrooms, and when we are in classes or in the auditorium, while we are moving around and talking with others. Please keep the aisles and the exit routes clear to allow for social distancing. Once you are in your seats and distance from one another in classes and in worship, you may remove your mask. We believe this is the best course of action for the family at this time. Our desire is for all of our family to worship together. We realize that there are different and even conflicting opinions, information, and science about the effectiveness of mask wearing as protection against the COVID-19 virus. Our decision is not based on any of these. We are attempting to meet the needs of all, and many are not comfortable coming to worship without everyone wearing masks. In Romans 14, the Holy Spirit, through Paul, instructs us to consider one another. Verse 19 reads, "So then let us pursue what makes for peace and for mutual upbuilding." It doesn't matter what we individually think about the effectiveness or non-effectiveness of wearing the mask. What matters is that, number one, we love one another. And I'm talking about the agape love, that is putting one's needs above your own. 1 John 4:11 says, "Beloved, if God so loved us, we ought to love one another." Secondly, it's important that we, again, put the needs of others above our own. Philippians 2, 3 and 4, chapter 2, verses 3 and 4 says, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only at his own interest, but also to the interest of others." We ask for your prayers as we navigate through this difficult time, that we will always lead in a manner that places our Father in heaven. Our plan is to resume in person Sunday morning and Wednesday night Bible classes on August 2nd at the building. Sunday morning classes will start at 9:30. The worship service in the auditorium will begin at 10:30 a.m. Wednesday night classes will begin at 7 p.m. on Wednesday night. Sunday evening service will continue online at this time. We will be streaming a worship video on Facebook and live stream at 5:30 on Sunday evening. Through the month of August, we will only have one adult class, which will meet in the auditorium on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights. We will continue our study of the great Bible chapters. The teens will also be resuming their classes on Sundays and Wednesdays with Logan. The children's classes will be set up like VBS, since we are not able to have normal VBS this summer. The children will start in the upstairs fellowship hall for singing, and then go to classes in the C wing that will be divided by ages. In these classrooms, they will be taught a Bible lesson and have craft time. These special VBS style classes will last for 3 Sundays and 3 Wednesday nights, from August 2nd through August 19th. Precautions are being taken to sanitize before and after each of these class sessions. Please continue to use good judgment and monitor your health and the health of your children as you prepare to attend these classes and for worship. We love you all and hope to see you soon. Please keep praying for this ongoing situation. Thank you.
Hey everybody, this is the Wednesday night Bible class, and I'm glad that you're here to watch. We've been talking the past couple of lessons about the Old Testament, and specifically we've been trying to cover the entire Old Testament, but tonight we're only going to finish the Pentateuch. So the whole Old Testament takes about how many years? It takes about 4,000 years, right? That's a long time. So we have the entire Old Testament taking up about 4,000 years, and we've got the first 5 books of the Bible called the Pentateuch. And the first book, which is Genesis, it takes up how many years? 2,500, about. It takes up a lot of it. It's over half. Over half the time of the Old Testament takes place in the book of Genesis, right? So we've got the book of Genesis. And what does Genesis mean? What's the book of Genesis about? Beginning, creation. So we've got the beginning of the world. We've got the beginning of mankind. We've even got the beginning of sin, don't we? But we've also got the beginning of God trying to save mankind, God initiating his plan to save man from their sins. And then we've also got the beginning of God's relationship with man and choosing his chosen people. Now, who did he choose to have this chosen people through? Abraham. We have Abraham, and he has a son of promise. And what is his name? Yes, Isaac. So we have Abraham and we have Isaac. And who is Isaac's chosen son? Jacob. Isaac has 2 sons. He has Jacob and Esau, but his chosen son that the promise is going to go through is Jacob. Now, Jacob, he has how many sons? 12. He has a lot of kids, doesn't he? And so we see in the book of Genesis that these 12 sons, they are part of this family. And Jacob, he also has another name. What's his name? Israel. So we have the 12 sons that eventually become the 12 tribes of Israel. And so what do these 12 sons do? Well, there's at least 10 of them that don't like one particular son. Who was that? Joseph. So they sold Joseph into slavery in Egypt. But everything works out, doesn't it? Because Joseph, he obeys God and he still listens to God. And so God makes Joseph the second in command of over all Egypt. And it's a good thing too, because his family had to come to Egypt for help because of a famine. And so the entire family ends up moving to Egypt. And then we get to the book of Exodus. And what does Exodus mean? Exit. You can hear it in the word Exodus, exit. So we have the leaving. The leaving what? Leaving Egypt. Okay, so we have this family. They moved to Egypt, but there was a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph. He did not know Joseph's God, and so he enslaved the people, right? Okay, so we have this Pharaoh, and he is enslaving these people for how many years? About 400 years. And so these people, they are upset, they're hurting, and God is hearing their cries because they have been enslaved. And so God, he chooses someone to lead them out of Egypt. Who does he choose? Moses, right? So Moses, he actually grows up in Pharaoh's house, but he leaves Egypt. Why did he leave Egypt? Because he killed somebody, right? He killed an Egyptian. And so he left and he went to the land of Midian. And what did he see that was so special in the land of Midian? He saw a bush that was on fire, but it wasn't burning up. And what happened with that bush? God spoke to him. And what did he tell him to do? He told him to go back to Egypt and tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And so Moses, he made up a bunch of excuses on why I can't do it. Well, they don't know who you are, or they're not going to listen to me, or I'm not a very good speaker. But God didn't have it. He sent Moses back anyway. And so Moses, he goes back to Egypt, and they have all the plagues. How many plagues were there? 10 plagues. It took 10 plagues before Pharaoh finally listened to God and let the people go. And then whenever the people did get let go, that just began this whole cycle of them complaining and sinning and God punishing them and then repenting and being faithful and then sinning and complaining all over again. So the children of Israel, they begin this cycle and they're going to complain. They're not happy. And it starts whenever they leave Egypt and they get to the Red Sea. And they see the Egyptians coming because Pharaoh, he has let the people go, but he's changed his mind. He doesn't want to actually let them go. He let them go, but he wants them back. And so he sends his army after them. And the children of Israel, they're standing at the Red Sea and they're saying, what just happened? We've been let go to die here at the edge of the sea. Well, that's not what happened, is it? God saved the children of Israel again. He parted the Red Sea and they were able to walk across on dry land. And whenever the army came, the waters flooded over the army and they were all drowned. But the children of Israel, they were saved, weren't they? So they get to Mount Sinai, which is where God told them to go to worship him. And they hear the law. They hear the 10 Commandments. And what's the first commandment? You shall have no other gods before me. Well, after they heard this, it wasn't too long before they decided they were going to make themselves another god. Because Moses has been on Mount Sinai for 40 days and he just doesn't seem like he's coming down. And so they decide they're going to build themselves a god. So already they're disobeying the very first commandment. They've already started complaining, and now they're disobeying the very first commandment. Well, while Moses is on the mountain, he's getting the law on what they should do in order to worship him and how they should worship him and the tabernacle they need to build so that there is a place of worship. Well, when Moses gets back down off the mountain, he is very upset because the children of Israel, they are disobeying. And so what does he do? He actually throws those 2 tablets of stone down and they break. Okay? So God punishes the children of Israel. And then those that are faithful, those who did not disobey, they begin to work on building the tabernacle. What is the tabernacle? It is the place of worship that God set up for the children of Israel to worship him. And he set up for the tribe of Levi, the Levites, to be the priests and the tabernacle workers. And so who is the high priest? Anybody remember? Aaron. Aaron is made the high priest. And so we have the book of Leviticus, which talks about the feasts and the Levites and the offerings and all of the things that the Levitical priesthood was to do in order to worship God. And so that is the book of Leviticus. And we see that Jesus is actually our high priest. Okay? So in the book of Genesis, Jesus is seen as that sacrifice to save us from our sins. In the book of Exodus, he is the Passover sacrifice. In the book of Leviticus, he is our high priest. So he actually is the one who sacrifices himself, but he also goes before God to offer that sacrifice. Okay, so now we are going to go on to the 4th book of the Pentateuch, which is Numbers. Now, you hear the book of Numbers and you think, what does Numbers mean? Well, it's exactly that. It is the numbering of the people. This year is 2020. And here in the United States, every 20 years, we have something that's called a census. Anybody know what a census is? It's where everybody in the nation is counted because they want to know how many people live here. Well, God told Moses to count how many people are among the children of Israel. And so they counted everybody except for the tribe of Levi because they had a special job. They were working in the tabernacle. They were the ones who were the priests and they were making the sacrifices. And so they counted everybody except for the Levitical priesthood. And so we have the book of Numbers. It's about the people being numbered, and they're actually numbered twice in the book. We have them being numbered in the 1st chapter. And then we also have them being numbered in the 36th chapter. Okay? All right, so the number, we only get the number of men, but there were more than men there. And it was more than just grown men who were strong. We had young men and old men who couldn't fight. We have women and we have children. But the number that we have recorded is 603,550 men who were able to fight. That is a lot of people. But that's not even the whole number of all the children of Israel. All right, so let's go to chapter 11. Everybody got your Bibles? I got mine. All right, we're in Numbers chapter 11. And we're going to see that the children of Israel, what are they doing again? They are complaining. Okay? So God, he has sent manna, which is kind of like a bread. He is feeding the children of Israel. He is providing for them. They have food, but they're complaining about it because we just don't like it. It's just, that's all we get. And so they're complaining about it, but God, he provides for them again, and he sends quail, which is a type of bird. It's meat. So they have bread and they have meat. Okay? Well, people are still complaining. Miriam and Aaron, they're actually Moses' brother and sister, and they start complaining. Do you ever fight with your siblings? Do you have a brother or sister that you fight with sometimes? Well, Miriam and Aaron, they did the same thing. They fought. They didn't like the fact that Moses was special because God chose him. And they thought, we should be in charge too. And God didn't like that. God actually punished Miriam and Aaron for that. All right, so let's turn to chapter 13. And this is one of the biggest stories that we hear about in the Pentateuch, okay? And we're going to talk about the spies. How many spies were there in this story? Do we know? There were 12 spies, okay? So Moses, he sends 12 spies into the land of Canaan. All right, so God has promised Abraham, back in Genesis, that the children that he has from Isaac and from Jacob and through all of his sons, they're going to inherit a land. It's called the land promise. And this land is the land of Canaan. And so the children of Israel, they've left Egypt and they're trying to make their way to this promised land. And so Moses, he sends 12 spies. And they're trying to see what kind of land this is. You know, they've got a lot of people. How many men did we say? 3,550 men. So there's a lot of people. So if you just went with all these people into the land, everybody would be able to see you coming, wouldn't they? But they sent 12 people out of that whole number. They sent 12 to go and see what kind of land this is. And so we have the spies. They go into the land of Canaan and they look around and they see everything. And then they come back and they report. Well, what kind of report did they give? Anybody remember? We had 10 spies who said, this is the most beautiful land that we've ever seen. It's flowing with milk and honey. And they brought back grapes that were so big and heavy that they had to be carried on poles. But you know what else they said? It's beautiful, but there are giants. And we just can't fight them. They had 3,550 fighting men and God on their side. And they said, we can't do it. We're just too afraid. They're just too big. They're giants. We can't do it. But there were 2 spies who said, let's go. We have God on our side and we can do this. Did the children of Israel listen to those 2 spies? No. Do you remember those 2 spies' names? Joshua and Caleb. Yeah. So Joshua and Caleb, they were the faithful spies. But because the children of Israel, they did not want to listen to God, they didn't want to trust God and rely on God and have God fight for them, they had to wander around in the wilderness for a very long time. Do you know how long they had to wander around? 40 years. They had to wander around for 40 years. And they actually had to wander around until people who were above the age of 18 had to die. And so the children of Israel, they ended up dying off, and we had a new generation coming up. And so let's keep going. We're going to go into chapter 21. And this is where we're going to see Jesus coming through in the book of Numbers. Let's go to chapter 21. All right. Let's go to chapter 21 and verse 4, and we're going to start reading there. It says, Then they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea. So remember the Red Sea? They crossed over the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom, which is also the land that the descendants of Esau had. Okay? And the soul of the people became very discouraged on the way. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. So we see them complaining again. They decide they don't like it anymore, and so they're complaining against God and against Moses, who is leading them. And they're saying, Why have you brought us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water. Do you remember? They've already had manna and they've already had quail. But here they're complaining and saying, We haven't had any food and there's no water. And our soul loathes this worthless bread. So, wait a minute. They actually say, There's no food, but we actually don't like the food that you've already provided for us. So they're complaining. Is complaining a good thing? No, it's not. So the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and many of the people of Israel died. All right, so whenever you're at home and you complain about something, say you're complaining because you don't like the food that your mama fixed for supper. Do you ever get in trouble for it? Yeah. Sometimes you get maybe a spanking. Sometimes you maybe get sent to your room without getting to finish your supper. Sometimes you're just forced to eat what you got, right? Well, God, He is punishing the people because He doesn't like their complaining. They're being very ungrateful. And so God, He is punishing them by sending these fiery serpents. Or you could almost say they're poisonous snakes. Okay? They're snakes and they're biting these people and they're dying. All right. Therefore, the people came to Moses and said, We have sinned. So they've gotten in trouble for this and they realize we're getting in trouble because we have sinned. We've done something wrong. And they're going to Moses and they're trying to ask for help. So we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that He take away the serpents from us. So Moses prayed for the people. So the people, they realize that they have sinned and they're coming to Moses so Moses can help them make it right. Then the Lord said to Moses, Make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, and it shall be that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, shall live. So Moses made a bronze serpent and put it on a pole, and so it was, if a serpent had bitten anyone, when he looked at the bronze serpent, he lived. Okay, so God told Moses to make this bronze serpent and set it up high so that when the people saw it, they lived. Okay, but they didn't live if they didn't look at it. They actually had to put forth an effort to go look at it. Okay, and so Moses, he made this, and if they looked at it, they were saved, right? Let's go to John chapter 3. And John, that's in the New Testament. We've been in the Old Testament, and now we're in the New Testament. Let's look at John chapter 3 and verse 14. And Jesus is speaking here, and He says, And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so as Moses lifted up this bronze snake in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have eternal life. All right, now, who is the Son of Man? Well, Jesus is speaking here, and He's talking about Himself. He is the Son of Man that is chosen. He is the promised Son, but He's also the Son of God. And in what way was Jesus lifted up? Anybody remember? Was He ever up on a pole or up high in front of other people? Yeah. He was sacrificed. He was crucified on the cross. And so He was hanging up high for everyone to see. Okay? And so if we come to Jesus and we obey Him, then we can be saved, right? So this is just one of the examples in the Old Testament of prophecy coming true with Jesus being that prophecy, okay? All right. Now, again, we have more and more complaining, and we have more and more punishing. But let's go to chapter 26, of the book of Numbers. And we see the second numbering of the people. Okay, so we've got the book of Numbers. Remember, it's about numbering the people to see how many people there were. Okay? All right, so chapter 26. And we've got all these people who are being counted. And remember, they're not counting the children of Levi. They're not counting the tribe of Levi because they have a special job. But they're trying to see how many people do we have who are able to fight for us, okay? So remember, this is just men, and these are just fighting men. It's not women and children and young men and old men or boys. It's just fighting men, okay? So we see that we have 601,730 fighting men. So we have a little bit less, but remember, some of the children of Israel, they were punished, and some of them got bit by these snakes, and some of them died because of it, okay? All right, so we have the book of Numbers about the children of Israel being counted, and we see where the children of Israel, they complained, and God didn't like it, and they were punished by these snakes. And we see Jesus as being that example of that bronze serpent being lifted up to save the people, okay? All right, now let's go to the last book of the Pentateuch, which is the book of Deuteronomy. And Deuteronomy is kind of a funny word. It's really hard to spell. So if you learn how to spell your books, it's going to be one of those tough ones. But the book of Deuteronomy literally means repeat or second law. Okay? So the children of Israel in the book of Exodus, they've already received the law. And we see the law again in the book of Leviticus. Them working out the temple or the tabernacle and the Levites offering those sacrifices. But in the book of Deuteronomy, we have the law given again. Okay? So remember, the children of Israel, they have wandered around in the wilderness for how many years? 40. And only the ones who were young then have lived. They're the only ones who have survived. And so the ones who heard the law originally, they're all dead. And so the children of Israel who are alive now, they need to hear the law. And so we have the repeat of the law, everything that God told them to do on how to worship and where to worship and feasts and everything they need to do to obey God. We have the repeat of the 10 Commandments, which was the first of the 10 Commandments. You shall have no other gods before him. So God is the only God. We have an account of their history. Okay, so the book of Deuteronomy, it's about the law that they received for the second time, but it's also their history. And then we also have Moses' death. Okay, so Moses, he has lived for about 120 years. He's lived a long life. And he has written the book of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. He has written the Pentateuch. So Moses, he is the author inspired by God. God told him what to write, but Moses wrote it down. All right, and so we see, eventually, we have Mount Nebo. Now, who remembers the children of Israel, they did not obey, and so they had to wander around the wilderness for 40 years. But Moses, did he ever get to go into this promised land? No, because he disobeyed God. He disobeyed God whenever he was supposed to speak to the rock, didn't he? He was supposed to speak, and what did he do? He hid it. And so God told him, you're not going to enter into this promised land. So the children of Israel, they're about to go into this promised land, and God is allowing Moses to see the promised land, but he can't go into it. And so Moses, he dies on Mount Nebo. But before he dies, Moses tells the people in Deuteronomy chapter 18. Let's look at verse 15. And it says, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your midst, from your brethren. Him you shall hear, according to all you desired of the Lord your God in Horeb, in the day of the assembly, saying, Let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, nor let me see this great fire anymore, lest I die. Okay, so Moses is telling the people that eventually the Lord is going to raise up another prophet like him. But he's not talking about just any prophet. He's actually talking about Jesus. So Moses is actually prophesying here about Jesus being that special prophet that's going to be coming from the children of Israel. Let's turn back into the New Testament in Acts chapter 3. Acts, which is right before Romans. Acts chapter 3 and verse 22. And we have Peter. He's preaching here. He's preaching to the Jews. And in verse 22, it says, For Moses truly said to the fathers, The Lord your God will raise you up a prophet like me from your brethren. Him you shall hear in all things, whatever he says to you. And it shall be that every soul who will not hear that prophet shall be utterly destroyed from among the people. Okay, so Peter actually tells the Jews, Moses, who you know and who you listen to, he actually talked about Jesus. And if he actually said, if you don't listen to this prophet, you're going to be destroyed. And he's talking about Jesus. Jesus was that special prophet. All right, so we have the Pentateuch, which makes up a little more than 3,000 years. Okay, we've got 2,500 in Genesis. We've got 400 in Exodus. And then we've got about 40 to 80 with Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Okay, so we have around 3,000 years of the 4,000 happening in the Pentateuch, in the first 5 books. Okay, all right, so we've got the beginning, the exiting, the law, the counting the people, and then receiving the law again. All right, so we're not going to be able to finish this study right now, but maybe sometime in the future we'll be able to continue this 4,000-year journey. But I hope you've enjoyed the study. And if anybody has any questions, you can always call me, find me, or talk to me or Miss Teresa about it. But we hope that you have a good rest of the day, and we cannot wait to see you in Bible class again. Bye, everybody.